welcome back. So today we're talking about my merchandise role. Pros, cons, what the role is like, how it compares to attractions, since I did also work in attractions. So let's get started. First off, let's talk about what you actually do in merchandise. So if you work in merchandise, your role is very versatile and you can work pretty much anywhere. You can work in any of the main 4 parks: Magic Kingdom, Epcot, Hollywood Studios, and Animal Kingdom. You can work at the 2 water parks, Typhoon Lagoon and Blizzard Beach. You can work at, I believe, ESPN, Downtown Disney, and you can work at any of the very many resorts. So there are a lot of different places you could be working if you get placed in merchandise. But that's another really good thing about the role, is that you can work at all these different places, and I'll be talking about that a little bit later in the pros. So let's talk about what exactly you do in merchandise. So with each location, there's going to be different specific jobs that you do, and each location works differently in terms of different types of shifts that you can do. But the basic jobs are just going to be like any other merchandise type role. You could be working as a cashier, which is just helping guests at the register, ringing up their stuff, backing it up. Pretty simple. You could be working in floor stock, which basically just means you're keeping the floor looking nice. You're making sure all the Mickeys on the shelf are nice and lined up, and you're making sure the floor is stocked. So people from the storerooms will bring you merchandise onto the floor, and you will have to put that merchandise away onto the shelves and make sure that we have everything that's in stock. And floor stockers are the primary contact with all of the guests in the store. So if they need something, it is your job to make sure you're in whatever section you're assigned to, so that way if a guest is looking for a particular size or a particular item, or if they don't even know if you carry this, you can look it up for them or find it in the store. Also, floor stockers, a big part of your job is going to be calling to the store stock rooms. In some locations, if the locations are smaller, you may just walk back to the stock room yourself. But if you have a bigger location like where I worked, there are people whose shifts is entirely working in the back rooms. So if a guest is looking for a particular size and you don't know if you have it in stock or not, you can just go up to one of the registers, use the phone, and call upstairs, and then they will send it down to the floor to you. So that is a big part of your role in merchandise if you're working a floor stock shift. I did have experience working in some smaller stores. I worked at the Christmas store in downtown Disney once, and you kind of do it all there because the store is so small. So I was assigned to a register, but I was also kind of in charge of just making sure the shelves looked nice if no one was waiting in line to be checked out. And I also would go to the back if the shelves looked empty. So it was kind of a 3-in-1 at that store, as opposed to my larger store. I had specific shifts where I was either register, either floor stock, or working in the back room. But the HOH or stockroom shifts are really different depending on your location, so I'm not really going to go into that. But basically, if you get assigned a shift like that, you're just going to be working in the stock room, shelving all the stock in the back stockroom itself, and then taking calls from downstairs and sending merchandise out to the floor. So those are the main jobs of merchandise. Now, the pros of merchandise. Merchandise is great because you can talk to guests all day long, which is a big part of why people like working for Disney, because you want to get to know people, you want to know why they came to Disney, where they're from, you want to try and make those connections with them. Even asking a guest a simple question such as "where are you from?" can spark a whole conversation. You might know someone who lives there, you might live there yourself. So it's just a really great opportunity that merchandise cast members have, is just talking to guests. You can talk to them while you're checking them out. You can, be engaged in longer discussions on the floor. So that's one of the great pros, I would say, of merchandise. Another pro of merchandise, pro number 2, is that because the role is generally the same job descriptions, either cashier or floor stock or in the back room, you can pick up shifts anywhere. So I had the opportunity to work shifts at Magic Kingdom, I worked in Epcot for merchandise. I worked, of course, in downtown Disney. Not just my store, I picked up a shift elsewhere as well. I also worked at ESPN for a shift. So that's the great thing, and a lot of people who work in merchandise make it kind of a role to work in all 4 parks, and you can even work in the water parks. So the only difficulty with that is picking up the costumes. You do have to make time to go to the costuming location, try on your costumes, make sure it fits, and that can be a real deterrent of people who don't want to work in different locations. And some people just generally really like their location and don't want to go anywhere else. But I think that's a great opportunity that merchandise cast members have, is that you do get to go and work at all the different locations if you want to. I had friends who worked at all 4 parks. They worked Animal Kingdom, you know, Hollywood Studios, not the water parks, but it is a great opportunity. So that's a pro number 2. Cons of working at merchandise. Even though the people you're meeting change all the time, so that part is really interesting. The basics of your job doesn't change every day, so it can get very boring and monotonous, and if you don't like fixing what guests mess up, then you're gonna have a very difficult time working in merchandise. And another thing that, this is true of all roles, but sometimes merchandise, because you have extended interactions, it can amplify the situation, and you can deal with some very rude guests or guests who get angry over things you can't control. And this does happen in every role, but I found particularly I had way more negative guest experiences in merchandise than I did in attraction. So merchandise, you can have very negative guest interactions if they're frustrated, if you don't have a size, or if they're trying to return something without a receipt and the process is taking too long. They can just get very frustrated. So that would be a con of merchandise. Merchandise doesn't really have too many cons unless you don't like having extended guest conversations, which, I mean, you should like to do that if you want to work for Disney, but that can be a negative for some people. And I'm not sure if this was specific to my location because I didn't have extended interactions at the other merchandise locations that I worked with. You know, I was only picking up 1 shift here or there, so I didn't fully understand the work dynamic, but I did find that another negative for merchandise was the interaction between full-timers, part-timers, and then CPs. I had very little interaction with the full-timers at my merchandise location. They didn't really seem to like the CPs very much, and we kind of clustered to our own. And in addition, within the CPs, we all got along for the most part, but there was a lot who worked at our store, so generally the people who you were closest with were people from your arrival date. And after working in attractions, I found that was very different because at my second work location, everybody was friends with everybody and got along great. But at this work location, I'm not sure if it was because it was so big or because of the role, but I found that that was definitely a negative. You know, I didn't have great interactions or friendships with any full-timers or really even part-timers either. I don't know if that could have just been also me not trying to talk to them. I don't know if it was, you know, a mutual thing, but that was another downside to merchandise. But overall, I think that merchandise is a great role to work if you like talking with people. The magical moments that you make aren't necessarily going to be with fast passes, but you can make magical moments just with your interactions that you have every day with guests. With little kids, it can be fun. If you pen trading, hello, I can't believe I forgot that. Pen trading is so fun. Another pro to merchandise, that's a great way to make fun guest interactions with not only younger kids, but adults as well. There's just a lot of different ways you can make magical moments in merchandise cast roles. We also have door greeters. I forgot to mention that in the roles, but that is another way you can spark smiles from people throughout the day if you just have your Mickey glove on you and you're waving. Or I know I made a magical moment one time where somebody wanted to use the penny press machine, but they didn't have any quarters, and I always I would try to most days keep 2 quarters and a penny in my pocket. So I pulled them out and helped a little kid make a penny press, you know, just a little penny, and so they were super excited about that. Those are the basics for pros and cons. I overall liked my merchandise role for the most part. has some pretty good pros. You can work at other parks. And yeah, so if you have any questions about the merchandise role, feel free to ask me down in the comments. My next video is going to be about my attractions role, so in there I'll talk about some of the things that made attractions better than merchandise. So stay tuned for my attractions role.